I have a feeling that no one is going to be up to watch this, and you'll probably see it on the replay. I was not anticipating covering this at all. Taking the vows right now. Don't worry, I'll say something after this is finished. Yeah, that real quick, that pastor was terrible. An awful speech. And I think we've already talked about my disdain for many of the various mentions of fables and got this, got that. So I'm getting kind of repulsed just sitting here. Hey, if that's what they want, want to do, I'm in favor of it. And really, it was in just being awake at the same time as it's going on, and I just kind of said, I might as well give it a crack. I will say that pastor's get up reminds me of the Hawaiian attire that's over here. We buy those Hawaiian shirts, yellow, green, pieces of white sticking out in the back. It takes a long time just to reiterate something else. You almost think you're watching the presidential inauguration from how much this was scrutinized. I don't know what that is. They wrap both of your arms in a little thing. Okay, we're going back to that thing. I can turn this down and finally speak now. I just wanted to give you the entire audio piece of the supposed saying of the I do's and the declaration and all that mumbo jumbo. and go into the parliamentary reasons for how this even came about. So you'll notice that at no point did I ever talk about this story, even as it was going on, the drama and the fiasco. That's because I truthfully do not care about, or really the wedding of anyone, but in particular the affairs of people who effectively are where they are because they happen to be the son of someone that actually built something, or just these dynasties. So to have this tale receive days and days and days and weeks of coverage, even as you had all these other important stories going on, kind of repulsed me. But I happened to be up while the procession was going on, and I decided that I'd rather tackle it and give you something to kind of push forward with, at the same time as whatever else I have currently coming up. But I'll tell you that what sickened me the most about this whole ceremony was that pastor's speech. I mean, it was, when they do the best addresses of the century, when those little scholars and historians get together, that should be in the bottom five worst. They should have a special list of just the worst ones, because it was so wide ranging, and almost bizarrely, uh, it felt like a spoof. Because as I watched the people line up for this wedding and get together, I could believe the idea that this was some kind of official state major event. Um, but to have this man come up here and start talking about MLK and uh, slavery and the love that the people who were enslaved had, and kind of, you ask yourself, you really, this is really worth, going into on the day of this event. This is what needs to be discussed and thought about and brought into perspective. This is really as true as we get. Um, it's disgusting, really, is because it's actually historically inaccurate to suggest that these slaves, by design, were so forgiving. They were that way because the slave master at the time in the U.S., or rather the slave masters, introduced those that were enslaved to religion to teach them and preach to them the concept of forgiving those that wrong you, knowing that warfare at that time was not advanced, and that if the majority of these slaves rebelled out of anger, they would likely be able to cause mass casualties. So it was a preventative measure. Here comes some more stuff to let me increase the volume on this. More fables. I mean, I've made it clear I'm not, you know, overly religious. I just keep thinking about the tendency among a lot of these modern era couples to break up after a few. Not even just modern era. You look at what happened with Diana and Charles, you'll know that it's not out of the realm of possibility that this will be over in a couple of years. I've actually seen people predict that, and some might say that's kind of tacky to go after someone and say it's going to end before it even starts, which is what I'm doing right here. I don't think it will, just giving you my perspective, but I mean, being far-sighted enough to predict that usually is not a good sign for the people involved. Telling you, man, they've made an entire spectacle out of two people saying we're going to say I do in 6 months when back when this was announced in November, and I just kept trying to avoid you know having it become the center focus of anything I spoke of on here because once again all of these other major events that we see daily and just recurringly throughout life. Yeah, I wasn't expecting Envoy to be up so early. I figured after your ex-wife, uh, after the evils that she committed, you'd be in bed all morning. But yeah, the reason I'm doing this Envoy is because I just happened to be up, and I decided to give my opinion on this event that people have been talking about month after month after month after month and hyping up. And it's funny because with the way that this had these big scandals, it's a running theme where the actual thing feels so underwhelming compared to what was thought of going into it. Because when people were outside and they were lining up waiting for the various, you know, um, heads of state to show up, that was exciting. And then when that pastor spoke, it just, I mean, I almost want to turn the thing off because that was the down point of any of this. Yeah, the reason the stream is like this is because I wanted to do a little multitask thing where I talk about something and then also doing something simultaneously, and obviously keep my eyes on what's written in the comment section. Yeah, don't worry, Envoy. This will be the only time this is talked about. This is the first and last installment of royal coverage, so you'll be satisfied with that. There's many other things that can be discussed here and detailed. Everyone's getting up and streaming. I didn't even notice that pattern on the floor, the white and black checkers, brown. I guess after the wedding is over, they're gonna pull out the what do you call it? The little coins and stick them on the floor. The envoy says, haha, yeah, it would be interesting to see how the relationship goes. Telling you, envoy, they look at what happened with Diana and Charles. You'll see that these big time marriages aren't always meant to be are as cracked up as we think they are. Brian asked, when do we expect my wedding? When the women that I happen to be around grow brain. Screen is black because I have it made that way. I'm doing something. Would you rather the screen be black or me holding the camera with one hand as you stare at the side of my face? Envoy says the media has already made a big deal about it since she's black. Yeah, they've overblown it. What I hated Envoy was that um, they were doing these flashback kind of retrospectives about, oh, she used to be an actor in this and actor in that. And I thought to myself, usually I'm used to seeing that when someone wins a presidential election, when someone, you know, becomes a major player for a league. They do a retrospective and tell you about the things that led to that. What did her acting career do to, make her? Well, not even that. I would think the acting career was more impressive than, being married to somebody, whatever. So it kind of disgusted me just the fact that this was seen as some kind of crowning achievement. When all you're doing is standing in front of cameras, answering maybe one or two questions a month, getting loads of pictures taken of you, and showing up in whatever attire to some old building. That's all it takes to have gone through this scrutiny, the quote unquote scrutiny rather. I mean, I'm really not impressed. It sounds so jaded. Oh, I sound so. Oh, I don't know what's doing that. I'm trying to make the. Usually the audio is better if I have the camera inverted, which is how things are going right now. This is kind of strange. If it keeps acting like that, I'll probably just end the stream and then start another one up. But can you still hear me or what? Let me turn this on here. Something is amiss. Oh, that's what you meant. Yeah, so it's not acting up. Also, by the way, I just noticed on YouTube they put the royal wedding little. See, that's how insane people are. They just assume everyone wants to see this. You go on YouTube and then in the side it says, uh, "Watch the royal wedding live," and everyone wants to turn onto YouTube right now. Is just coincidentally interested in this. Which, by the way, I just went over to the stream and it's at a different point than the supposed live coverage on television. So that figures. Yeah, but you're gonna notice that all of the women that decided to, you know, do the whole biracial thing are birds of a feather and flocking together today. They actually made a point of mentioning that no politicians were invited to it. All this hocus pocus. Yeah, I never understood the refusal to just, like, for example, if it were me, I wouldn't want this. And people, you might say to yourself, well, they're only doing all of this because it's the royal family. But I've seen people who aren't even notable that will, have extravagant type weddings, and it's just, if you really care for the person, why do you need an event where you have a guy going up and talking about MLK and slavery and uh, various loads and loads of individuals to show up? And when I've, talked about this with other people, they can't fathom. Why wouldn't you want all of your family members to see? Why wouldn't you want? Man, come on, stop. Just if it's. I always thought the people who are getting married should be the center focus. So, maybe that's just me who's insane to think that. Yeah, I'm glad you noticed my cynicism with this whole event. Extravagant weddings never been my thing. I've been into weddings before, for family and whatnot, just a bunch of people sitting around. Yeah, hey, well, not to, necessarily tie this into what I talk about, but, anytime someone I know's gets married, I just think about that 3 and 10ths of only 3 and 10ths of current era African Americans getting married. So it's always, it's like being told you can see a unicorn. I have to go and check this out, either by pictures or by sitting up in there. It's once every 5 or 6 blue moons. That's how rare that thing is. I would like to get married on the beach during a sunset, though. That's the romantic in me. Uh, yeah. Well, I can guarantee that if you, or should I say remarry? Oh yeah, the new wife after Lucille. That'd be funny. So we're gonna get to a point where no one remembers that running gag from yesterday, and they're gonna say that I'm now revealing people's names and privacy concerns and whatnot. No one can just take the time to watch the stream literally exactly before this one chronologically. They have to get upset about whatever I say and use it to push their own narrative and agenda. So I would say my favorite part's been the instruments and maybe the vowels. That's only because everybody's quiet and there's not some excessive need to show out and be all grandstanding. Yeah, we get enough of that in my comment section. It's very satisfying to finally have the whole thing done with. I guarantee you the coverage of those two, you either won't hear anything about them for a month, or if you hear anything about them, it'll be every 2 or 3 months. It will drop significantly, and that's one thing I don't mind after what we've seen. Like for example, when we have coverage of Trump, it makes sense because he's in office and the things he does affect both domestic and international affairs as it relates to the U.S. But I mean, to just have this constant, consistent focus on people over getting married, just I don't know where our heads are. Actually, I do, but I don't want to be offensive to anyone who sees it later on. They'll go in that count. How could you say that about such a wondrous event? With people this popular and coming from a regal background, it's to be expected. So I get that. It's just at one point you get fed up with it because remember we've gone through now 6 months of the excessive press, the analyst. I actually there was this one analyst that I'm not going to say her name, but you can probably figure out who it is. She was talking about it about maybe 3 or 4 days ago, and because of the way these televisions are set up when they do interviews with people, I actually thought she was somewhere in her mid 20s or something because they do a headshot where it's your upper torso and then kind of your shoulders removed. And I found out she was in her like mid 40s, and I just so I got so turned off that just it was amusing to have it be ended in that way. And it's funny because if I saw her or anything else, I wouldn't have thought that. It's because the way they set those cameras up, they make people look younger than they are. At least that's the effect I got from it. Um, yeah, right now this is moderately entertaining, just the music by itself, not this incessant need to just have. I told you that pastor almost made me just turn the whole thing off. But right now is pleasurable um, for what it's worth. None of that other festive nonsense. Yeah, and they were hyping it up as the Queen's potential last wedding that she's going to. I didn't hear what the pastor said. Was he go? Oh, yes. Go do yourself. Let me see if I can find it in that stream on YouTube. That was terrible. That was an abomination to not just that wedding, but to my ears. It's very awful. I'm trying to see if I can find it in the stream right now. It's one. Um, where is it? 45. I wish I could post a link for it. 1 million people are watching. Wow. Shows you where our heads are. Oh, okay. That's not the beginning of it though. To give you a brief synopsis, what disgusted me was the fact that he brought up MLK out of nowhere, and then also brought up how we need love, and then mentions the slaves having. Yeah, I know you're watching on YouTube Envoy. I have good recall. You mentioned it earlier. I didn't forget. He brought up the slaves and their love as this theme of we need love to prevail and whatnot. And I thought that was disingenuous because the slaves, as a result of the religion that they were indoctrinated into by their captors in the U.S., were taught to love their enemy. That was the doctrine of that religion, so that they would not engage in any type of warfare against those who had oppressed them. So it was a farce, to say the least. It was revisionist history, to say the worst. Do you think do you think part of the world's problems, especially in Western countries like America, is the fact that race is always mentioned, that is always something that's mentioned? Yeah. You can't get over race if you keep, emphasizing it every time something happens. First black president, first, you know, black royal. Just go away. What was it? First, what was the name of that show? Bachelor. For first black bachelorette. Just all of it is problematic. Kiwi says, "What's up with the Jew slash Muslim guy that was talking before? I have no idea." I say hello to Kiwi. He's gonna jump out of here in like 5 seconds because that's what people like to do when my picture isn't on the screen. They show up for 1 minute and then they run off to check out the actual. I guess they think I'm supposed to have the camera to the television, but I don't even like having the audio. I keep thinking I'm gonna get copyright. They go after me for all kinds of things. I had a video just completely devoiced because I was in a car with someone who happened to be playing, I think, a Drake song. First Hispanic president, then a first woman president, then a first black woman president, and God only knows what next. Okay, I don't know if you just heard that the beginning of that instrumental sounded like, or rather, the beginning of that thing right here where they're holding with the little kids behind her. It sounded just like Darth Vader's theme goes. That made me laugh. But yeah, going back to what you were saying on boy. Yeah, we have this thing where we just can't accept. You have to actually be able to do something rather than be of a ethnic group. We actually reward people um, over their background. If you look at when Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize, it was basically just for being black. Which, in hindsight of the rest of his tenure, that thing really should be revoked. Like how they did with Cosby, where they revoked all of his doctorates because people came forward accusing him of stuff. Do the same thing with Obama's Nobel Peace Prize. Go out and kill 90% the wrong people in drone strikes, and I'm supposed to believe that's an advocate for peace. You really can't make this up, man. And when you sit most people down, they don't want to believe this. They don't. I've had so many deny. That's not true. That can't. What was Luke's quote after Vader tells me his father? That's not true. That's impossible. That's how they feel when you tell them about the Obama drone strike thing. They will lose their mind, man. How dare you talk about the prophet? Luke's facial reactions were hilarious. Yeah, where he has that scarred up eye, and then his mouth is just extending all unnaturally. They really wanted to sell you on the idea of this is not happening. This is some bizarre, evil alternate world. Because if you look back at the framing of, so we just watched Star Wars, the original film by itself. Don't forget Obi-Wan said, "Vader killed your dad." So it really did come off as a wait that just was discounted the previous film. What is he talking about at that time? Which, by the way, I can't wait to talk more about those films because there's just so much stuff I'm going to go into just of how ridiculous people are when it comes to these movies. No, we need some parodies of some of the arguments made. I probably would, if I was going to talk about it, Star Wars anyway, just make a video that was edited and then lay out, discount various arguments people have made in favor of parts of the franchise. Okay, so right now they're walking out of the chapel holding hands. Descend the steps, as one commentator said. I can't believe that the royal family channel has 340,000 subscribers. That is ridiculous. So many people slept outside for days just to see the newlywed. Yeah, that shows you just how much. And I guess that's part of to kind of capitalize on what I was talking about earlier. It's part of what I really don't like about when people say, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing this all the time. Go do this." You know, this I recognize the significance of this event, while at the same time recognizing that I have my own responsibilities and that going to see this to such an extent that it gets in the way of those things won't do me any good. But they don't want to hear that. Uh, Now they're having the procession come, I guess, for lack of a more wanting term. Or Kate bending over to tell her daughter something. That's by the way, it's yeah, lovely day outside. I can't say that over here in California, man. It was I don't think I saw the sun one time yesterday. I mean, that was terrible. Just like that pastor speech. That thing really did sink the ceremony for me. I didn't even want to watch after that. Yeah, it was all dark and dreary over here. Hey, Envoy, how long do you think it's going to be before someone comes? Stop being negative, even though it was. Appreciate the good parts of the dark and dreariness. I like how we've gotten to a point now where you can't even describe anything matter of factly. You know, they want you to play off as if nothing bothers you, just whatever. We've been over that before. He must have been overly grandiose. Who was overly grandiose? Also, by the way, I want to point out. Oh yeah, that was yeah, man. Um, Go further back in that stream. That was horrible. I hated every minute of it. It is literally if if I could rate the wedding by portions, I would say that the music was a 7 in most instances. Yeah, it was that one. Um, I would say the music was a 7 in most instances. The vows, even though I'm not a fan of all the little religious overtones, I expected that they were a 7. Like, there was no problem with the pastor. I give him an 8, whatever. Um, and that pastor was a 2 or a 3, arguably a 1. It was the lowest point of the entire ceremony. I abhorred every minute of it. It's awful. Oh, yeah, the wonders of multitasking. I like how people still haven't adjusted to not seeing me on here. Told them I'm not gonna hold this camera for an hour. And they make a big deal out of every single thing about these ceremonies. It's so grossed out. But that's finally over. I feel like the second they disappear off screen is when the stream ends, just abruptly, no goodbye, nothing, just whatever. I think it's so funny how that car is relatively modern that Queen Elizabeth is in, and then it has this little flag draped on the top of it. They couldn't just have a regular car. They have to make sure that you know of its significance via the imagery on there. America's worst though, flags and patriotism everywhere. The presence is ubiquitous. Um, I don't mind flags if they're not, uh, in the way of anything. It's just it feels so overdone for an hour-long event. Just all the coverage, all of just none of it. I don't understand. I know you were saying the thing about because of what their status, but people do that over here too, just not without the media coverage, of course. They will sit there and talk about something for a lengthy amount of time. I always say, man, I don't care. Yeah, the horses, the cars, it's all over the place. When you watch this stuff and they try to squeeze in those classical elements of culture, you almost feel like you're in some kind of time warped reality. Let me say a little Dirk. Yeah, we're just in here talking about this whole festivity. It just ended a couple of minutes ago. I'm giving my well, technically they're still visible and riding around in their little 1840s saddle. Envoy, stop yelling at Dirk. That's cyberbullying. Dirk is saying the Royals amazing. I hope that that is a joke. Dirk, to give you a synopsis, I said that the actual ceremony activities, like the music and the swearing into the what to being married or whatever, those were both decent for what they were. But that pastor was horrible. It was horrendous. I mean, if you ask me, would I rather jump off a oh my God, it's covered everywhere. Yeah, Dirk, it is the event of the year. If Trump's inauguration was the event of last year, this is uh, the event of this year. Okay, Envoy says that he thinks I want to grab a rock and make quick work of the pastor. No, I want to make quick work of his that speech. It was not good in the slightest, and I think Envoy would be echoing my thoughts if he heard it. Anyone who hears it will likely think to themselves, uh, "Am I at a wedding or some kind of civil rights protest?" I mean, to be that out of touch with where you are and what, uh, it's sad because I know most people aren't going to be bothered by the slavery thing. They're not going to think, what was the big deal with him saying that? Voice says once again, it's all about race. Um, yeah. Dirk says I'm watching it right now. Don't the horses, smell like horses? Um, ever since they put more fiber in their diet, I'm sure. It is just insane to sit here and watch people, actively. You say hello to Donnie here, Mister. I like to miss every single stream now, Mister. I'm never in attendance whatsoever to any stream at any point in the current era. Dirk says that's not romantic at all. I agree. I don't know. They couldn't just be in a car and have with the top down like like a motorcade or something. It's why the horses? People try to harken back to older things so much they throw out common sense. Now they're described. One of the commentators, this is Allison Camerota, is describing Megan's upbringing of her being born into modest and then getting to this. Uh, I really am disgusted by that because you're basically saying that she's successful to have been married to a man who, wouldn't have known who she was if it weren't for her acting career, which would should be the thing that's being more applauded here, but okay. Dirk says, "Isn't this like unsafe?" Yep. O'Donohue claims I've been making more streams now, which is not true. They're at the same rate as they've always been. You're getting 1 to 2 a day. It's very rare to get 3 or 4 in one day. We're definitely gonna have 2 today though. Other one might be in the afternoon, depending on how things are going. I think I was, if you go back and listen to the beginning, I was describing that one commentator that they had on this show, and um, I thought she was kind of attractive. They had the camera fixed up on the top of on like her face and the upper part of her shoulder, and they made her look like she was in her mid 20s or something. And then you turn on, you go and look on Google or whatever, and you find out she's almost, 50 or something. So, uh, that was entertaining to me. Oh, I know this woman did not just describe that speech that pastor gave as inspirational. I really hope I misheard that. I'm gonna assume I misheard it. There's no way that did not just pierce my eardrums. Maybe there were two versions of that speech, and I just heard the worser of the one. Yeah, people have this thing. They just want to make everything seem so festive and even when things are festive, that doesn't mean they're wonderful. JFK's funeral was festive. It wasn't wonderful in the slightest. That was a depressing, traumatic event for the U.S. Oh, wow. As I was speaking, one of these commentators said that the wedding was Kennedy-esque and the torch has been passed to a new generation. How do, ask yourself this, how do you compare being elected to the highest office in the land to being born into this privileged family and picking some actress that would have already been with a person who was significant to begin with? And they make it seem like these people are diplomats or going to make some major, massive change, and they're not. Ugh, I don't get that comparison at all. And the fact that they let them just sit there and say that is what I really don't like about corporate media at this point. And that includes when they cover things that are as not necessarily substantive as this. They find ways to just blurt out things that don't make much sense, are inaccurate, or just, the person who's readily knowledgeable of these events will say, "What?" So it's all gross. And if it seems like a running theme where you just go and you look at many of the people who are watching this and commenting on it, you're going to see a running theme where no one wants to ask themselves, what have either of these people done in their lives other than, who they were born to and some career that every single other person can and will have, um, to warrant this kind of scrutiny. It's because when you actually break it down and say, what accomplishments does this person have by themselves to, make them so attractive to media coverage, they stop in their tracks and go, because there's no defending this. Um, it's just, two people who happen to be seen as attractive by most commentators, at least, and for that reason, along with the fact that one of them had you know, uh, the privilege of being born into a royal family, uh, get massive coverage, loads and loads. And you have all this famine and disease and murders, and they get 2 seconds on local news at most. The priorities of the world in 2018 are very telling of where we've gone and dropped. Like I said, it makes perfect sense to do this for presidents and for other, prime ministers and all that, because they actually will govern and influence things and can, be conventional in terms of their impact. But here it's just, what are you doing? Is this serious? All right, if anyone else have a comment? Yeah, I figure so. After O'Donoghue said that he killed everyone else's ability to type on their keyboard. Uh, so I'm thinking of ending the stream right here. I'll come back later on to do something else. I want to thank all of those who have participated, and I will probably do another one. Maybe what wedding is this? I know O'Donoghue did not just ask that. You don't know if you don't know what wedding it is. After we not only put the name of the two people in there, but you've seen this chat log. I know you've seen it, so you're messing with me. But yeah, I'll have something else up to today, maybe in a couple of hours, maybe in 5. It will be just keep an eye, enable notifications. You'll find out I don't usually have control over when the window of opportunity comes to do this. If you catch my drift. So, thank you for watching. Have a good day.